Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giordano. Make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, be sure to follow me on social media at P.A.S. Report and share this episode with 3 or 4 people you know. The more you share it, the more visibility the new contract with America gets, because today we are diving into part 3 of the new contract with America. And before we move forward, I want to take a moment, recap parts 1 and 2, because the response from all of you has been absolutely incredible. I'm humbled by your feedback. You know, the messages, the reviews I received, the honest conversations that many of you have sparked with these ideas has been phenomenal. And over the past 2 weeks, we began laying out a practical blueprint to fix the major problems that are plaguing our country. Now, in part 1, we hit on the foundational issues, ending the weaponization of government, regulatory reform, eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, restoring the concept of federalism, lowering healthcare costs, reduce dependency through welfare reform, revive self-reliance, reverse the collapse of the American education system. And all these ideas, they're not abstract debates. These are real solutions rooted in the Constitution, designed to rebuild the pillars of a healthy republic that we've lost some time ago. In part 2, we tackled the politically taboo issues, the ones that the political parties try to avoid. We took on Social Security and Medicare reform, the sacred third rail of American politics. We confronted the politicians that pretend the problem doesn't exist. And we moved into immigration. And I laid out a clear, enforceable plan to secure the border, modernize the legal immigration system, and end the insanity of loopholes and catch and release, ideologically driven policies that are weakening our nation. And the objective has always been simple: give you a new contract with America that actually solves problems instead of the political theater. And let me tell you, the reactions from the listeners have been overwhelming. You know, I had on X, Doge PA wrote, "This new contract with America brings a logical, pragmatic, and sensible outline to what ails the nation." And that's exactly the intent of this new contract, a contract that's serious and thoughtful, a contract that is grounded in reality, doesn't just rely on campaign slogans. You had Manny comment that the action items are deeply rooted in the founding values and ideals. And yes, that is deliberate, because any reform has to be anchored in our founding principles. We can't allow the founders' vision to collapse under the weight of modern politics. And then I saw a small-time dude's response on Apple Podcasts. He left a review, and I encourage all of you, always leave reviews. It always helps with the podcast, and I appreciate it more than you know. He wrote that these ideas are great and refreshing, and he wants to share them with friends and family. He asked if there's going to be a short version, a simple summary that could be passed around, and the answer is yes. I will be putting out a 1 to 2 page fact sheet that outlines all 10 issues in new contract with America. I'll have it ready within a week, and it's going to be posted on the website. So go to PASreport.com. You'll be able to download and share it with other people there. And I also want to thank everyone who emailed me. So many of you wrote in with support for the ideas, with thoughtful questions. And if you ask me why certain issues weren't included, and that's a great question. And that's why I love my audience, because they're engaged. They do ask questions. Out of all the challenges America faces, I selected these 10 issues because I believe that they are the most pressing issues, because solving these 10 is naturally going to impact many of the other issues that didn't make the list. Take fiscal responsibility. Some asked, why didn't you include a full segment on balancing the budget? My answer is simple. If we implement the 10 reforms that I'm talking about in this new contract with America, especially when it comes to spending reforms, regulatory reforms, entitlement reforms, welfare reforms, economic revitalization, there is no question that not only can we begin balancing the budget, but we'll be able to start generating surpluses and actually pay down our national debt. See, addressing the root causes is far more effective than tinkering at the edges that the politicians like to do, because all that does is delay the inevitable. It continues this movement towards the big government apparatus. It continues to add to our national debt. So the real purpose of this entire series is to get to the root causes that are plaguing our country, the problems that we faced in the 21st century. And listeners come to the P.A.S. Report podcast, not just for political analysis and commentary. You could get that anywhere. You come here because you want to understand the issues that plague our society, and more importantly, you want common sense solutions that aren't going to burden the taxpayers, that are going to restore concepts like limited government, that revive the concept of self-reliance within our society. Ultimately, this new contract strengthens America's commitment to liberty, and that's the intent. Our country is off course. There's no one that could dispute that. And you want real ideas for how to turn it around. You can find 1 million podcasts out there where entire episodes are simply based on outrage. All you get is the outrage machines going, and that doesn't solve anything. Here, you get solutions. And this new contract with America has been my effort to do exactly that, because I wanted to provide a bold, clear, actionable blueprint to reform our government, to restore the greatness of this country. I want my children to grow up in the America that I grew up in. And today we're going to reach the final chapter, part 3. And the last 2 issues that complete this new contract with America, these are big ones. In a moment, we're going to get into issue 9, which is America's path to energy dominance, the economic revival that comes with exploiting the rare earth minerals we have right under our feet, trillions upon trillions of dollars. This is not just an energy conversation. It's not just about oil and gas, green energy. This is about national security. This is about supply chains, global power, the economic future of our children. And then we're going to move into issue 10, election integrity and congressional term limits. Because if you cannot trust your elections, if a permanent political class controls the legislative branch, which has happened, none of these forms are ever going to be allowed to happen. And these last 2 issues tie the entire contract together. So we need to take a quick break. But when we get back, we're going to jump into issue 9, lay out how America once again becomes the energy and industrial powerhouse of the 21st century. Welcome back to the P.A.S. Report podcast. Now, let's get into issue 9 of the new contract with America. And this is America's energy future. This is our rare earth mineral dominance, because this one issue will determine whether the United States remains the world superpower in the 21st century, or we begin to move in a bipolar, tripolar, or even a multipolar world. Are we going to continue our dependencies, our vulnerabilities? Are we going to continue the instability that has been created here in the United States? And I want to start by making something very clear. Energy is the foundation of everything. Every product, every service, every industry, every household, everything relies on affordable, abundant, reliable energy. Now, President Trump said something last week at a rally that was absolutely right on the mark. He said if we continue lowering the cost of energy, especially gas prices, you automatically bring down the cost of everything else. And he's right, because every good sitting on the store shelf, from groceries to furniture to electronics, it requires trucks. It requires ships, trains, planes. It's got to get there somehow, some way. So high fuel costs, along with printing of money, drive inflation. Lower fuel costs begin to bring it down, increasing our economic GDP, giving people more disposable income to spend elsewhere in the economy, leading to economic growth, and hey, maybe, just maybe, increasing our GDP to a point where we could start paying down our national debt. But for many of you, it's not economic theory. For many of you, when it comes to energy, it's your life, it's your budget. It's the reason every trip to the grocery store today feels like a punch in the gut. See, the Trump administration was screwing up. And what I mean by that is they were going out there and telling people that this is the best economy ever. And they were making the same mistakes that the Biden administration made that I called out here on the podcast. You cannot tell people that you have a strong economy when they don't feel it. You can't tell people that the economy is wonderful when they're struggling to make ends meet. You have to be able to have empathy towards people. It's the economy, stupid. You got to relate to them. You got to understand the economic pain people are going through. And things are improving. They no doubt are. I mean, let's talk about something as basic as home heating for your home. In 2024, I was paying almost $4.29 a gallon for home heating oil. $4.29, that's a lot of money. Today, it's down closer to $3. Think about what that means for a 200 or 300 gallon tank. You're saving hundreds of dollars every single fill up in a full winter season. That could be over $1,000 saved in your pockets. And I know many of you feel that relief because you needed that relief. But even with those price drops, the cost of delivering energy is still too high. The cost of the goods on the shelves is still too high. I mean, when we look at energy alone, here on Long Island, we pay some of the highest electricity rates in the entire country. A big reason is because it's a blue state. You know, when we look at overregulation in places like New York and California, it's insane. But it's also not just regulation. It's our entire energy grid being pushed to the brink. Most people don't realize, but in 1980, we had a population of about 226 million people. Today, we're at 350 million people. That's over 100 million more. Our energy consumption has doubled. It hasn't increased by just 20%. Hasn't increased by 40%. It's doubled because we have all these modern technology devices that are devouring our energy. And while we built some new power plants, we haven't come close to building enough to meet the modern demands. And with AI systems, data centers, you have electric vehicles, smart homes, cloud computing. Every piece of technology we love, it requires massive amounts of electricity. You may not see it when you plug your iPhone into the wall, but the grid is strained. The grid is on the brink. It wasn't built for all this. Now imagine what demand will look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So we need a real energy plan, not Fantasyland, Green New Deal nonsense that doesn't provide anything and actually causes more energy strains. We need a plan that's rooted in reality and science, and that means building new plants at a rapid rate. That means that we have to start to embrace small modular nuclear reactions. They are safer, cheaper, scalable, and they could be deployed far more quickly than anything else. We have to get out of the mindset that this technology is not good. It is good, and it could solve a lot of problems here in the United States. But the problem with small modular nuclear reactors is bureaucracy, regulations, environmental reviews that take a decade. You have activist lawsuits. The second you go to start breaking ground, you're getting sued by 10, 12, 15 activist organizations trying to tie the project up. You have federal agencies that are totally incompetent, tripping all over each other. Now, when we look at some nuclear plants, they've taken 25, 30 years just to approve a nuclear plant. That's insane. How can we compete with China when it takes 20, 30 years just to approve a project? We're not going to be able to remain a world power if it takes a generation to approve a power plant. Then you look at our refining capabilities. How many of you are aware that the last major oil refinery built in the United States was 1977? 1977, think about that. We had 220 million people. Today we have 350 million. In 1977, most families had one car, maybe two cars. Today, everyone of driving age in a household has a car. And yeah, we've upgraded our refineries, but it's nowhere near enough to handle what we need. And when refining capacity doesn't grow, what do you think happens to fuel prices? They go up for everyone, whether they own a car or not. Because again, everything you buy is transported with fuel. So it's not just hurting your wallet. This is actually weakening the United States. And this brings me to the second half of the issue. Rare earth minerals. Almost nobody in Washington wants to talk about the rare earth minerals that we have right under our feet, the trillions upon trillions of dollars. Nobody wants to talk about how rare earth minerals in the 21st century is going to determine the balance of global power for the next century, along with AI, of course. And right now, you have a country like China that controls 70% of the rare earth mineral market. Now, these minerals are essential for everything. Your smartphones, your batteries, your missiles, satellites, aircraft, semiconductors that are used in every single product today, whether it's a television, an appliance, a refrigerator, a vehicle. We have AI systems. We have advanced computing models, quantum computing that may be coming online over the course of the next decade. And we have to rely on China for the materials that are powering our technology, for the materials that power our economy, that power our military. Think about that, how this is a massive national security threat that we're facing. And if China ever wants to squeeze the United States, they don't need to fire a missile. They just need to cut us off from the supply chain. Suddenly, our capabilities are going to collapse. Our technology sector collapses. Our military readiness is going to collapse. Now, of course, if China does that, it hurts itself too. I'm not naive to that. But China has shown repeatedly they're willing to take short-term pain and losses to gain long-term dominance. Their goal is to become the dominant power on the world stage. And the worst part, the United States has so many rare earth minerals right under our feet, but we don't extract them, we don't refine them, we don't use them. So we look at why, and it's the same thing when we look at our refining capabilities. It's the same thing when it comes to building power plants, bureaucracy, regulation, federal agencies blocking projects, environmental groups filing lawsuits, permitting processes that take 15 to 20 years. And what's China doing? Every week, they're building new mines, new refining plants, new supply chains, lightning speed. We should be the global leader in rare earth minerals, but we're not. Instead, we're dependent and we're vulnerable. And we're leaving trillions of dollars in the ground while China's taking the lead. Now, if we unleashed our capabilities, if we streamlined permitting, modernized regulations, built out domestic refining and processing, we can transform the American economy. This isn't an exaggeration. This would actually spark a real golden age because we'll be able to rebuild the American manufacturing sector. We'll be able to lower energy costs nationwide, strengthen the dollar, bring back high-paying jobs. You know what it will do to the labor market here in the United States? We'd boost GDP massively, increase federal revenues without raising taxes. I mean, that's a novel idea, isn't it? And if you boost federal revenue, balance the budget, and then ultimately generate surpluses, pay down the national debt. But most importantly, we'll outcompete China for the next 100 years. This is how America wins in the 21st century. So when we look at issue 9 of the new contract with America, this is what we demand. You fast-track drilling, refining, nuclear plant construction. You deploy these small modular reactors where the grid system is on the brink. And you modernize and secure our electric grid. I mean, the fact that we passed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that didn't really go to infrastructure, it went to BS like racist roadways, should be criminal in my opinion. That money should have went to modernize the grid system. Some will say, oh, well, some of the money did. Yeah, a few $1 billion. That's it, out of $1.2 trillion. Instead, it went to far-left activist groups. Instead, it went to the green agenda that collapsed on itself. We need to expand refining capacity, launch a rare earth strategic development initiative. Permitting should take maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years at most, not 20 or 30 years, not 2 or 3 decades. In the end, we have to end our dependency on China. We have to unleash the explosive economic potential that's beneath our feet. And this will lower costs for every single American family. This will make everyday life easier than it is today. It will strengthen our economy, our military. Most importantly, it strengthens our position on the world stage. And it gives America an edge that no adversary can match. Because energy is strength, it's security, it's prosperity. Energy is a foundation that allows every other reform in the new contract with America to succeed. And if we get it right, we don't just compete in the 21st century, we dominate it. Now, we need to take a quick commercial break, but when we get back, I'm going to get into the 10th and final issue of the new contract with America. It is an important issue that you won't want to miss, so hang tight, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the P.A.S. Report Podcast. Now, be sure to click the follow button so you never miss an episode, and share this episode with 3 or 4 other people, because we really need this new contract with America to gain traction if we want to have any hope whatsoever of saving this country, of restoring the founding principles of this country. And I want to turn to one of the most important issues of all. And I mean this sincerely. Without this, nothing else matters. You could fix Social Security, you could secure the border, you could unleash American energy. But if the American people don't trust the integrity of their elections, the entire system will collapse on itself. And we've seen that breakdown begin to occur because elections are what give a constitutional republic legitimacy. They're the mechanism by which we grant consent to be governed. And when trust erodes, when people start to believe the system is rigged, when people start to believe the system's manipulated, you begin to get apathy. People begin to get angry, and other people begin to disengage from the political process. It's one of the biggest reasons turnout in the United States is embarrassing low. We're supposed to be the leader of the free world, and yet when you look at voter turnout, particularly for local elections, it's absolutely pathetic. But even in statewide and federal elections, it's just as bad. Why? Because so many people feel their vote does not count, so what's the point of wasting time going to the polling station to cast their ballot? And the uncomfortable truth that both sides need to hear, you cannot have a functioning republic if half the country believes elections are fraudulent and the other half of the country believes any questions about fraud make you a conspiracy theorist. That's not healthy to the system. That doesn't create a stable country. And that shows that the relationship between the people and their government has been broken. So when we look at issue 10, we have to begin with restoring trust. But how do you restore trust? Well, I have a number of ways. One is you got to clean up the voter rolls. It's a simple first step, and it should be nonpartisan. I don't know why people try and make it so complicated. We see pushback from those who enjoy the status quo, from those who are benefiting from the system. You have the Trump administration that's trying to work with states to clean up the voter rolls, but of course there's pushback when there shouldn't be. Every state has bloated, inaccurate voter rolls, and we're talking about dead people, people who move, duplicate registrations, illegal immigrants. Why wouldn't you want to clean that up? Does that make sense to anyone out there? It's not that hard to do. And I want people to just think about this logically. Someone's receiving Social Security. They pass away. Death certificate gets issued within a month. Social Security stops sending the checks when someone dies. Why can't they be removed from the voter rolls just as quickly? Why can't we have a mechanism in place where when someone passes away, that death certificate is sent to the State Department of the states, so that they could take those people off the voter registration? This is not voter suppression. This is a primary responsibility of our government, especially the state governments. It's a basic hygiene function of the republic. So we need a coordinated nationwide effort among the states to update our voter rolls, to constantly keep them accurate. And if we do that, what do? Well, we reduce questions of elections, we reduce vulnerabilities, we reduce errors, we reduce opportunities for fraud, and most importantly, we're going to increase public confidence in elections. So this is just common sense, except in Washington, D.C., in corrupt state capitals, that's where common sense goes to die. But anyone who opposes this idea of cleaning up our voter rolls should be forced to put on record exactly why they oppose this effort. They should have to justify their position to the American public, especially if we're able to do it in a nonpartisan manner, which it could be done. A commission of Republicans, Democrats, and independents leading the effort. If you don't like that, then bring in some third-party auditor from the outside to run the whole damn thing. This is not hard to do, and the fact that we haven't done it is truly pathetic. Every single official should be ashamed of themselves that we haven't done this yet. The next aspect of my election reform, it takes the politics out of elections. Now, I know that sounds odd because elections by their very nature are political, but what I'm calling for is a complete forensic audit of the last two presidential cycles. Every ballot cast, every machine, every chain of custody, every anomaly. And let me be crystal clear. This is not about overturning anything. This is not about relitigating the 2020 or 2024 election. This is about something that is far bigger. It's about understanding the system. It's about finding any vulnerabilities that might exist. Determine whether fraud was a minor problem, a major problem, somewhere in between. Make it nonpartisan. First of all, this would be a multi-year effort. This is a massive undertaking. So it's not like it's going to be completed in 1 to 2 years. When you look at that, it's going to span administrations. Make it independent so it does not influence any sitting administration. This is how mature nations actually handle controversies, and with transparency and truth, not political theater. If we find fraud is small and rare, great. The country can move forward with confidence. You know, we're constantly told that fraud is just a drop in the bucket in our elections. Yeah, it occurs, but it's not enough to change the outcome of elections. So why would you be against doing this forensic audit? If fraud is really that small, then you could say, see, we were right. And the public could say, okay, we understand. We get it. And now, once again, we have confidence in our elections. That's a good thing. If we find that fraud is widespread, Well, now we know. We know what to fix. We know how to fix it. So either way, the American people deserve answers, not slogans. And there's a problem that everyone else sees, but nobody really wants to touch. I mean, we're practically the only advanced industrialized nation still using electronic voting systems as a primary method. This is absolute stupidity. France, Germany, Canada, Japan, the United Kingdom, they all use paper ballots. Why do you think that is? Because paper ballots are secure. Paper ballots are verifiable because you could count them, you could feel them, you could recount them, you could audit them, you could inspect them. It's not based on codes and algorithms or anything like that. When you look at electronic voting machines, they're black boxes. You don't know what the code is. You can't inspect the software. You can't guarantee the chain of custody. They can be hacked. They can be manipulated. And even if no fraud occurs, the perception of vulnerability undermines trust in elections. So if countries that are just as technologically advanced as we are trust pen and paper, why don't we trust pen and paper? Are we smarter than the rest of the world? Or are we just more arrogant? So let's bring back paper ballots because paper ballots bring back accountability. And I know accountability is a novel concept for the government, but without accountability, this country doesn't survive. And we haven't seen accountability in decades. When we look at the next piece of the new contract with America in issue 10, 85% of the American people support voter ID. Now, when you get 85% agreement on any issue, that's no longer a partisan issue. That's a national consensus. That includes Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, non-affiliated voters. And yet the political class, mostly Democrats, all Democrats pretty much, they want to fight it. Why do they want to fight voter ID? Well, they claim that voter ID disenfranchises people. They claim it's racist. This is absurd. The real racism is the idea that minorities are too dumb or too poor to obtain ID. That should offend every thinking, capable adult in this country. I mean, let's be honest here. You need an ID to fly. You need an ID to drive. You need an ID to open up a bank account. You need an ID to buy friggin' cold medicine over the counter. But somehow requiring ID to vote, the most important function within a republic, is that's a bridge too far. That's beyond the pale. Give me a break here. Voter ID is necessary, and I'll debunk the lie right now. Georgia passed stronger voter laws, including voter ID laws, and what happened to voter turnout? Did voter turnout drop? No, turnout actually went up, not down. But another problem that we have that nobody is talking about, that I think is probably a much bigger issue, and I don't have evidence of it, but I think it's a much bigger issue that needs to be tackled. We need to look at nursing homes. We need to look at the voting that's coming out of nursing homes. How many people do you have in nursing homes, elderly people, that no longer can function themselves? And I'm not talking about those that may be physically disabled. I'm talking about those that mentally they're incapable because they suffer from Alzheimer's disease, dementia, or something else. How many of those people are casting ballots in an election? We need to know. Again, it could be small, but we need to have a nationwide investigation looking at strictly nursing homes and whether or not people with Alzheimer's disease and dementia are actually voting, and whether or not they're being pressured to vote, someone else is filling out their ballot, whether or not they're being told how to vote. I think that that's completely reasonable, but everyone ignores it. Nobody talks about the nursing home issue, but I think that's something that certainly needs to be looked at, just like we need to look at early voting. Okay, early voting should not be a month-long marathon. I think a week of voting is reasonable. A month is ridiculous. And even a week, I could argue, is ridiculous. But okay, everything's changed in our society and you know, everyone has different schedules. But when voting begins, long before any debates occur, long before revelations are dropped, long before people could really learn about the candidates, it invites chaos. How many times have people voted a month prior to an election, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks before Election Day, a bombshell drops? I mean, just look at the Hunter Biden narrative, the Hunter Biden laptop. Forget the suppression at the hands of the intel officials that signed on to that letter. Forget the suppression of Miranda Devine's laptop from Hell story. How many people prior to that story being dropped already cast their ballot? This is sheer stupidity. You should not have a months-long voting. A week is sufficient. And there should not be ballot harvesting in the United States. This is perhaps the most insane idea ever introduced into an election system. You allow partisan operatives to collect ballots and turn them in? Are you kidding me? That destroys the integrity of the election process. No serious nation in the world would allow something like that. Yet here we are in the United States. Here we are. Many states do allow this exact practice. The stupidity amongst American officials never ceases to amaze me. And the people that support these initiatives, ballot harvesting, is completely ridiculous. People should be responsible for submitting their own ballots, period. End of story. You know, when I talk about fraud, I am much more worried about the political operatives behind the scenes that could potentially manipulate thousands of ballots than the person that may try and vote twice. That's what we need to really worry about. And ballot harvesting opens the door to just that. When we look at ballot harvesting, we also have to talk about the money behind the elections. Elections should never, ever, ever be influenced by private billionaires funneling hundreds of millions of dollars through nonprofits disguised as voter education organizations. We saw this with the Zuckerbucks. Okay, this isn't charity. It's not philanthropy. This is targeted political influence. We need to ban private election funding. All election administration has to be transparent, and it has to be through the states. Why are we allowing so-called nonprofits, who are really nothing more than far-left activist organizations, let's be clear about that, why are we allowing them to have so much power in our elections? That needs to stop immediately. And if Democrats aren't willing to move on this, then Republicans should create similar types of organizations. They should do the same thing that Democrats do, because you will see how quickly Democrats will call for reforms the second Republicans start benefiting from doing the same practices that they do. Now, when it comes to elections, one of the biggest problems our country faces, and it goes hand in hand with elections, I want to be blunt about this, Congress is corrupt. Not because every member is corrupt. There are some very good members of Congress that are there, that are trying to do the right thing. But the system itself corrupts itself. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that when elected officials could spend an unlimited amount of time within government, they begin to get institutionalized. It's like the person that goes to prison. They're there for 50 years. They get released, and they don't know how to reacclimate to normal life, because they've been institutionalized by the system. They've been institutionalized by the structure. That's what they know. That's what they understand. And so what happens? Well, they go out committing another crime, not to harm anyone, not to victimize anyone, but to get arrested and go back to the prison, or they commit suicide. Well, in Washington, D.C., it's a little bit different. They just get corrupted. They spend decades in Washington, D.C., in this blob, this Washington bubble. They're isolated from their constituents. They're surrounded by lobbyists. They're surrounded by donors and bureaucrats. They're inoculated from economic downturns, because in Washington, D.C., the land where we print money, they don't have economic downturns. And what you see is they become more loyal to the system as opposed to the voters that they're supposed to be serving. The Founding Fathers never intended for Congress to be a lifelong career. They envisioned a citizen legislature, ordinary Americans serving temporarily and then returning to private life. At the time, they didn't put in term limits. Why? I think there's a number of reasons, but one of them is we had automatic built-in term limits. It was called death. People didn't live as long as they live today. And no politician in 1789 probably foresaw people spending 50, 60 years in Washington, D.C. I mean, you look at Joe Biden, over 50 years in the D.C. area, whether it's a senator, whether vice president, whether president. Okay, we need term limits. And term limits would restore the model that the Founding Fathers envisioned. They would break up the entrenched political monopolies that we see. It would break up this idea of the uniparty that exists. You bring in new blood, new ideas into the system, and this reduces corruption. This, again, restores accountability. And most importantly, it connects representatives with the people they took an oath to serve. Now, I am not naive. Congress will never willingly limit its own power. I'm not stupid. You would need a constitutional amendment to do this. And, I believe Senator Cruz several times has introduced a term limit bill, a term limit amendment that would apply to Congress. But Congress is never going to vote on this. The only way I see this happening is through an Article 5 Convention of States. And yes, that is a difficult process. It's not guaranteed to succeed. A lot of people have concerns over a Convention of States. But if you do a limited Convention of States, you could get this right. Put the states back in charge. Again, it restores that idea of federalism. Why do you think that in Article 5 of the Constitution, the Founding Fathers put in 2 ways that you could amend our Constitution? Why do you think that is? Well, because they knew that when it comes to limiting the power of the central government, you're not going to be able to get through a constitutional amendment through Congress, and so you have to provide another vehicle that sidesteps Congress, and that's the Convention of States. When we look at preserving the republic, we have to understand it does require some structural reform, and if we can enact term limits, we break the stranglehold of permanent political elites. We restore trust in the institution designed to represent the people, the institution that has the most checks and balances within the system, the institution that is the largest part of our Constitution with 10 sections, where most of the other ones have 4 or less. There's a reason that the Founding Fathers placed such an emphasis on the legislative body. They wanted power to be in the hands of the many as opposed to the few. So when we look at congressional term limits, when we look at election integrity, it's the foundation of everything else. Without trust in our elections, no reform matters. Without term limits, Congress continues to operate as the professional ruling class. They're detached from the problems of the American people. And these reforms, cleaning voter rolls, banning machines, the electronic voting machines, restoring paper ballots, implementing voter ID, banning ballot harvesting, stop the private election funding to these activist organizations, imposing term limits. This is how we return power to where it belongs, we the people. Issue 10 of the new contract of America. When we combine all 10 reforms, we begin to rebuild a freer, stronger, more secure America. Now, we need to take a quick break, but when we get back, we're going to tie this all together on why this new contract with America makes sense, how it fixes the problem that maybe didn't make it onto the list, and what we could do to advance this agenda. So everyone, hang tight, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the P.A.S. Report podcast. Now, we covered a lot of issues over the course of the last 3 episodes. 10 issues, 10 reforms, 10 areas where the system has failed the American people. And I want to leave you with a very important takeaway as we close out on part 3 of the new contract of America. None of what I've outlined is complicated. None of what I outlined is radical ideas. This isn't fringe. None of it requires massive new government programs, trillions of dollars in new spending, some grand utopian experiment that's ultimately going to fail. What it requires is something Washington and, frankly, the American people have been completely devoid of for a very long time, and that's will. Every solution in this new contract with America is built on smart objectives. Objectives that are simple. Objectives that you could measure. Objectives that we could attain, that are realistic and can be implemented in a reasonable time frame. So what I'm outlining here is not pie-in-the-sky academic theory. I know I'm a college professor, but theory doesn't translate into reality. These are practical solutions for creating a more responsible, limited government. And I think that when you talk to people on the other side of the political aisle, I think that if I'm sitting down with a Democrat and I'm going through these reforms prior to the political noise, I think that most Democrats would agree with many of the solutions that I outlined in this. Most Democrats would be supportive of it if you talk to them the right way. Because what should infuriate every taxpayer listening to me right now is most of these reforms cost little to nothing. Many of them actually reduce spending, eliminate waste, and save taxpayer dollars, billions of dollars. We're not talking about growing government. We're talking about shrinking it back to the proper size as intended by the Founding Fathers. And think about how these reforms work together. Ending government weaponization doesn't just protect liberty, it restores trust in institutions. It reduces political prosecutions. It stops the endless cycle of retaliation that has destabilized this country to a great effect. If we reduce waste, fraud, and abuse, it's not just about efficiency. It directly addresses our national debt. It lowers the inflationary pressure. We won't have to print money. And it stops Washington from lighting your money on fire. If we restore the idea of federalism, it doesn't just return power to the states. It limits the damage of bad federal policy. And it also returns power to you, the people. When we look at this idea of federalism encourages innovation, and it allows states to serve as the laboratories of experiment instead of being beholden to the centralized apparatus that's completely out of touch. When we look at healthcare, it's not just about lowering premiums. It's about breaking the cartel system that currently exists, the system that nobody understands, the system where you have no idea what a service actually costs. When we talk about lowering premiums, it's about increasing competition, shift the focus back to patient outcomes instead of this bureaucratic red tape compliance. And guess what? If we combine it with restoring federalism, California wants to do a universal healthcare system. They're free to do it. Go ahead. And you know what, California, Governor Gavin Newsom, if it works, other states will adopt it. But if it fails, which I suspect something like that would, at least we didn't ruin it for the other 49 states. At least we didn't ruin it for every single American outside of California. So you want to go down this grand trial of universal health care, do it at the state level first. Let it be California, not New York, because I live in New York. Let it be California, and let's see what happens. When it comes to welfare reform, it's not about cruelty. You know, whenever you bring up welfare reform, you hate people. You want to see people suffer. That's what simpletons they are out there. And they know they throw that around, people begin to self-censor and shut up. But when we talk about welfare reform, it's about restoring dignity. It's about self-reliance. It's about the idea of upward mobility and reducing people's dependency on government. When it's about welfare, it never should be a way of life. It should never be a permanent solution. Welfare was designed initially to be temporary. When you go to cut it, you always face the backlash. But we need people in this country to be more competent and self-reliant. That's part of the reason that we got into this mess in the first place. And we can't fix that if we don't fix our education system. Because education is not about ideology. It's not about conservative or progressive or Democrat or Republican. It's about competence. It's about producing capable individuals who could read, write, think, manage money, contribute to society without being dependent on the state. Social Security and Medicare reform. It's not about cutting it off for seniors and hurting seniors and making seniors live in poverty. It's about saving the program from collapse. It's about strengthening the program, giving younger Americans a future instead of a guaranteed crisis that if we do nothing, we know it's a crisis. We know when the dates are, and yet we're just slow walking to it. When it comes to immigration reform, it's not about hatred or racism like the left likes to scream. It's about sovereignty. It's about national security. It's about assimilation. That if you come here to this country, you should appreciate the country. If you don't appreciate it, don't come here. That you want to be an American, that you believe in the American ideals, that you're thankful that we've allowed you to come into this country, and you adapt to our culture as opposed to the country adapting to your culture. That's what assimilation is. We need to make sure that we have an immigration system, that we have immigration policies that serve American interests, not the interests of others, especially those that illegally come here. Moving on to energy independence, rare earth mineral development. These are not just economic issues, they're national security issues. They lower the cost of living. They strengthen supply chains. They weaken adversarial governments like China. They create enormous growth potential. And this growth potential will allow us to tackle our national debt. It will create enormous opportunities for every single American. You want to talk about economic mobility, the solutions. When we look at energy independence and rare earth mineral development, this could reshape the labor landscape. This could create a massive amount of great paying jobs as the labor market at a time when it's facing serious threats, when AI is threatening to eliminate thousands of occupations. Why not create an opportunity for Americans not just to succeed, but to thrive and prosper? And then finally, election integrity and term limits. This isn't about partisan power plays. It's not giving one party power over the other. This is making sure that we don't have a uni-party. This makes sure that one party doesn't become too strong. Elections are the foundation of government legitimacy. Without trust in elections and accountability in Congress, nothing else matters. So you notice, I didn't put the national debt as one of the 10 issues. Why? Because if you implement these 10 reforms, there's little doubt we begin balancing the budget, generate surpluses, and pay down the debt. Fiscal responsibility is not one policy. It's the result of many policies working together. And that's the entire point of this new contract with America. There isn't just one silver bullet. All the reforms I'm talking about across the board, it fixes all the other problems that didn't make it onto this list. And it returns government to the proper role. It restores a culture of responsibility, a culture of competency, a culture that loves liberty. Let me be clear. You are not hearing this anywhere else. Most politicians will tell you what you want to hear. Most commentators, they'll complain endlessly without offering any solutions. They'll bash one side over the other because of their ideological biases. Most hosts, they're afraid to challenge their own side. That's not what we do here. You come to the P.A.S. report because you want analysis. You come here to understand the problems we face. But you also come here for solutions. Solutions that aren't going to burden us even further. Solutions that are rooted in limited government, that restore self-reliance and a love of liberty. And that's where you come in. So I want you to share this episode with 3 or 4 people you know, family, friends, co-workers, post it on social media, tag me in it. People are frustrated with everything that's going on. People feel stuck. People think nothing can change. But it can if we do our part. And send this episode to members of Congress. Not just your representative. I mean, we always think that we could only contact our representative in Congress. Send it to every member of Congress. Send it to Democrats, Republicans. Send it to the leadership. Send it to the committees. Pressure them. Force a conversation. And next week, I'm going to be posting the 1 to 2 page fact sheet. You don't have to send the entire episode. I mean, that's great if you do, but you don't have to. I'll have the 1 to 2 page fact sheet that clearly lays out the new contract with America. Simple, something concise, something that's easily shareable, something you could attach to emails, forward directly to Capitol Hill offices. Use it. Flood their inboxes. Change never starts in Washington. It starts with pressure from the people. And if we want a free America, if we want a more prosperous America, if we want to secure our future and have a fiscally responsible America, we have to begin to demand it. Not with anger, not with yelling and screaming, not with calling everyone names, not with slogans. We have to be clear. We have to be disciplined, and we have to have the resolve. And when you have people out there telling you it's over, right? It's over, Republicans are going to lose the midterm elections, that the system's too far gone, that it doesn't matter, that there's no point in trying to fix a system that's unfixable. Well, doesn't that kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy? Doesn't that kind of guarantee our own demise here? I'm sorry, but I'm not willing to surrender that easily. I'm not going to be sitting idly by and doing nothing. I may not win the battle. I may not win the war, but I'm going to go down trying to make the change. See, the problems we face, they're not unsolvable. We aren't too far gone. I want to give my kids the same opportunities I had growing up. I want my kids to grow up and fight for an America they believe in. I'm not willing to accept that the American experiment is over, that it's too late. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I understand it will be difficult. Anything worth any substance whatsoever doesn't come easy. You have to earn it. And for the millions of Americans that feel they have no purpose in life, make this your purpose. You know, in the America's Founding series, I often talk about ordinary people rising to the occasion, becoming extraordinary. It wasn't easy for them to do that, but they believed in something that went far beyond themselves. The only question before us today isn't whether we can solve the problems we face. The question is whether we have the will to solve them. Do we have the fortitude to step up and keep pressure on them? Or are we going to take the coward's way out? That is this new contract with America. This is where the fight begins. And if you want that vision to happen, you share this episode, talk about these ideas. You could pass the ideas off as your own. I don't have an ego. I don't need to take credit for any of this stuff. If a member of Congress wants to run with it and make it like they created it, I'm fine with that. Because the more people that realize solutions exist, that we don't have to accept what's going on today, that we don't have to accept this bloated, incompetent system we have, the more pressure there's going to be to implement change. And that's why this is the P.A.S. report, political analysis and solutions. We don't just complain here. We think, we question, and we find solutions for the problems we face.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, Visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at PAS Report.